Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down to talk again about the Xbox Activision deal. There's been a lot of moving parts, but what I wanted to do was have a discussion on my general expectations. This is a video format we've done before for Starfield before it got shown off in its full direct. This was before we saw anything and still have yet to see, by the way, Fallout 4's Next Gen update. And we did this type of video for the Xbox Showcase. I typically like to record these videos almost in a vacuum, if you will, before a ton of information hits us, just to honestly check myself, see what I get right, see what I get wrong, and spark a conversation. So today we're getting into my expectations on the Xbox Activision deal, because following what happened between the Xbox and FTC in court and Xbox winning that case, it looks like we're going to accelerate this deal and finally close it. With that, it means that we can start looking realistically, honestly, after all the information that's poured in since January of last year, on what to expect with this deal. What will change? Naturally, a lot of gamers are looking at console games, Game Pass, exclusivity, and I think Activision will provide that in spades, but what are my expectations? I think they're a little bit different from what I'm seeing online right now. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. If you're new here, you're into Xbox, Activision, like I mentioned before, you've been warned in advance, we're gonna be talking about it a lot, so consider subscribing. And now let's get into it at the top. Generally, I think what's gonna start things off is a roundtable of sorts. I feel like we're gonna get a lot of the Bethesda treatment in that. We're gonna see the execs that we're familiar with, probably Phil, Sarah, Aaron Greenberg, Bobby Kotick, maybe Lulu Chang as well, all sitting around having a conversation about the process and why their partnership makes sense. A lot of, we'll say, pleasing the audience, like, hey, look, we're all together, this is family now. Just like they did with Xbox and Bethesda, where they had Phil, Aaron Losey, they had Pete Hines, Todd Howard, and they were cycling all these different faces to show off the partnership. Now, during that, well, they said no announcements were coming, we got plenty of announcements. One of them was a big dump of Xbox Game Pass games. That feels like a term I shouldn't use, big dump. That doesn't sound right. A lot of games came to Xbox Game Pass that day. I think it was about 20-ish games from Bethesda got placed right into Game Pass, and it led to a resurgence of games like Prey. Tons of people were celebrating Prey. So I wonder what the game from Activision may be in that sort of conversation. But no doubt that Game Pass, that team's already rocking and rolling. Like, okay, what can we bring into this service right away? I'm thinking things like Crash, Spyro, Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remake has been one I've held off on since this deal got announced, because I was like, you know what, that feels like the ideal, like, wait for Game Pass type of game. I know I should have already played it. I mean, I loved Tony Hawk growing up, man. Shout out to American Wasteland. That was my personal favorite. But wow, I just, there's so many games that are gonna get poured into this service, and that's gonna be the immediate impact. I think based off what we saw at the roundtable, we're gonna get something like that. But let's take it a layer deeper, shall we? Backwards compatibility is a topic that comes up so often with the Xbox community. FPS boost. Will these programs be reactivated temporarily to maybe bring back some more Activision classics that are starting to maybe collect dust on a nearby shelf? I don't know, man. A lot of people have faith in Xbox that I don't think I quite do. I would love to see them take Singularity as an example. This is, for those who have never heard of it, a BioShock style game that is by Raven, who went ahead and made what I think was one of the better Call of Duty campaigns in Black Ops Cold War. They've always been so good, and they made this great, again, BioShock inspired title with lots of choices and consequence, multiple endings, and it was a first-person shooter. It was so cool, and that's stuck on the 360 and PS3. I would love to see that one come back and back compat as a pick, and I'm sure all of you out there have your picks. For me as well, you know, Activision had a pretty tight stranglehold on that Marvel license, and they had shitters, we'll call them, like Amazing Spider-Man 2, but they also had goated superhero games like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which they did a PS4, Xbox One port for, and then when they lost the license, had to take it down. They've made what I thought was some underrated TMNT games. I know a lot of people hate them, but Out of the Shadows. I think a lot of people are maybe flying a bit too close to the sun with their hopes that Xbox is gonna come in and salvage the whole operation, you know, remove developers from Call of Duty, one of the main reasons Xbox got this company, and have them start bringing these games back. It's something I'd love to be completely wrong on. And I know it's something Phil in the past, when this deal first started to come through, seemed kind of open to, especially in the terms of IP reactivation. Like, he wants the teams to talk to him. That's something he said. So I think that type of stuff is possible. But in the terms of, hey, let's go dig out this old 360 game and test it out, based off what the team has said with FPS boost and backwards compatibility, they've, quote, tried to figure it all out. I don't think it would hurt to try again, using my air quotes again, because I think when you look at something like PS3 back compat, where they're like, we tried, but it just doesn't work. I think if you tried a little bit harder, PlayStation, you'd find a way. When there's a will, there's a way, in my opinion. So I feel like Xbox isn't going to dig into back compat or FPS boost that much. I think Game Pass will see a significant surge. But with that, some people don't care about back compat. It's about what's the new thing? What's the next big thing? Do we get exclusives out of this? One game that comes to mind, and this was on my prediction list, it's one I got wrong when it came to the Xbox showcases. I thought that we'd see another flex of the Xbox Activision partnership at that time. We know that there were some marketing deals, for example, like Diablo 4, and I was thinking that Odyssey would be a game shown off for the first time ever on Xbox's stage. Odyssey is described as a survival game with what Jez Corden said was more like cartoony graphics that apparently runs really well on Series S. Last we heard, it's 90% done. It does run on multiple platforms, but Jez said in his write-up and on Xbox 2 that he wouldn't rule out exclusivity. I think this is one that Xbox kind of snatches up. Look, they have to be able to read the room and kind of acknowledge the fact that something I said in yesterday's video, which is this year, even with Redfall, was completely saved by Bethesda for Xbox. If you did not have Hi-Fi Rush, and hopefully Starfield delivers, but in the terms of hype, anticipation, conversation, Starfield's already that dude, right? Where if you did not have these two games, what Xbox would have been left with this year is Forza Motorsport and Minecraft Legends. I enjoyed Minecraft Legends, and I actually think Forza Motorsport, as someone who's not crazy into racing games, looks cool. Like the career mode, I'm really kind of strangely into, which is not like me. I don't know what's going on with me. Am I getting old? Is that what happens? Anyway, point being is, I think Xbox has to acknowledge, wow, if we didn't lock down Bethesda, what happened when we delayed 2022, right? We had nothing. We had Pentiment, which was great. We had Grounded 1.0, also great, but not big tentpole type games. So having Bethesda was a major part of the success of this year. And I think you have to recognize delays happen. And if you have content that's ready that you can make exclusive that's not been announced, by the way, like it was with Indiana Jones, we learned with the FTC court case, like, yeah, it's going to be exclusive now. You know, some people had reported and said, oh, it could be multi-plat, but never officially was it that, right? We never, ever talked platforms for the game. I think Xbox might see if they can lock down an Activision Blizzard game. We'll see, of course, if it's got live service elements or multiplayer elements. I have a hard time imagining that, but at the same time, you look at Sea of Thieves, Halo Infinite on console. I know people don't want to hear it, but like, look, I'll put some respect on Halo Infinite on console's name, right? We're looking at about 15,000 active players daily, not too bad, but Sea of Thieves is super popular. I think Xbox can make service games thrive on their respective platforms if there's crossplay with PC and Xbox. They have Contraband on the way, so even if it's live service, there's the chance that they make it exclusive. But I think just out of the sake of personal preservation, like, oh, we don't want another 2022 again. That was a horrendous year for them, as far as I'm concerned. You maybe lock this one down. So I think that's one that comes to mind. There's a ton of nostalgia for games like Spyro or Crash or Tony Hawk, and the list goes on. And making those exclusive, I mean, one thing that Xbox said that they couldn't address was games for kids, so to say, right? Like your Crash Bandicoot. It's funny, right? Because like there are levels in Crash Bandicoot. Call me unskilled. I remember I was in an article on, I think it was like Kotaku or some crap, because I was having trouble with one of the levels in Crash Bandicoot, and I tweeted about it, and they were like kind of egoing a little bit online. It was really weird, but I remember Xbox saying like, hey, you know, we need these types of games for all different audiences to make Game Pass appealing for all age ranges, naturally, right? And I feel like that's the type of stuff that they're gonna want to have exclusive to their platform, because then you can sell your Series S to a younger demographic, not just the people of my age and a little bit younger and a little bit older. So Xbox can benefit from locking those down. I'm curious if they really go for it. I think that it's gonna be one size fits all, and that if you already see conversations on things like Elder Scrolls 6, to me, that's the tippy top, right? That's a major game. We're talking about the successor to Skyrim, which sold millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of copies. And the next one is going to be exclusive. I think if that's going to be exclusive, you can bet your butt that anything else is probably going to be exclusive too. That's how I look at it, which I know not a lot of people want to hear, but that's personally how I'm viewing the situation. Another talking point I wanted to get into was management fears. Yeah, this is definitely fair, because when you think of something like what's happening with the initiative, I think that's why Xbox has been going around and buying up these teams. I think they vastly underestimated just how difficult it is to build a studio from the ground up. And with Perfect Dark reportedly, according to IGN recently, still being years away, like 2025, 2026, given that the studio was announced in 2018, I think that's really what accelerated Xbox into buying a lot of these teams up. And so we've seen with various talent management issues, such as not getting in on Redfall soon enough, which I think is a damn shame, to reported, but I'm not buying in type of problems like what's going on with Undead Labs and State of Decay 3. Again, I'm not really biting on that report yet, but there seems to be a problem with Xbox keeping an eye on these teams from the outside looking in on what's being reported versus the invisibility of the product. And now when you add Activision into the fold, which has to manage itself, I think that problem almost gets exaggerated. I really think it's going to be an insane managerial task for them to handle. And I look at something like Embracer Group, where they grew to mammoth level size. And now we're seeing them chop and chop and chop and chop. Naturally, it was inevitable. And I got to give credit to my boy from Last Stand Media, Colin Moriarty. He definitely has been saying that for a while, that, you know, when you look at Embracer Group, they're just way too big. And I worry about Xbox in that regard. We know they're not done shopping after this. We know they're not. So, of course, I know people are ready to talk about who's next. You know, I think of someone like Sega, and I'm like, that's another major publisher. Now, when you're looking at where Xbox headquarters is located, across the planet. So these companies, these publishers need to be able to manage themselves, and some clearly do it better than others. Bethesda was having a bunch of issues. We now know Activision having a bunch of issues. So I worry about that kind of stuff for sure. I think we all think about the games first, but I do worry on a management level about quality standards being met, because there's so much to keep track of now, which is a good thing and a bad thing. No doubt Game Pass will be full of life, but still something I wanted to voice. The last talking point I really wanted to get into is something I've said a couple of times now. I definitely said it on Defining Duke ad nauseum, is I think this is mostly a mobile move, which I know isn't the thing you want to hear, but I mean, when you look at what happened with Xbox and the FTC in court, you can see with your own eyes that a lot of these potential acquisition targets that they had in this big list all came down to what the mobile division was like. They weren't just shopping for console exclusivity. They seem to feel very confident with what their first party can bring, third party partners can bring, and now with Bethesda and Activision in the fold, that when they're shopping for these teams, it's like, okay, what is your mobile division like? And whether it was King or Sega, or it was Square Enix even, every single one of these companies that were on the shopping list were mentioned because of their mobile gaming division. And even some developers like Niantic were on the list because of mobile. I mean, Xbox is looking to really grow that part of their company big time, because there's a ton of revenue in it. And Phil said it himself. He said, the reason we're doing this is here's the flat line for consoles, PC, and then here's the incline for mobile. So it's growing fast worldwide. And I've kind of accepted that, in the sense that hopefully what happens in a perfect world is Xbox gets their mobile money, they can reinvest in that how they wish. But when they get their mobile money, they, you know, make sure that passion projects like Pentiment, for example, can still be greenlit. I think it's really important Xbox doesn't lose touch with that. So it's going to be a careful dance that they have to do here. But those are my general expectations from the outside looking in, with all the context we have behind us, but not knowing what's ahead of us. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts on what you expect with the Xbox Activision deal down below. Please do fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the heck out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.